Realize racism is a thing until you leave that thing. Been in LA 25 years, and you would think because of all the different races of people that are here, you would think that we would come together, not because of the color of our skin. I'm a registered nurse, 33 years. I've been called 1,000 times by clients at the beginning of the shift, but by the end of the shift, they want to apologize, and I'm still a person. So
what's going on? This is your Silver Stranger 01. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Let's get in part 2.
me hating, should that be a okay thing? The hate starts in our mind, then we speak it, then we act on it. Is that okay? And from slavery, 400 plus years, when do we as people stop it? When do we stop it? I don't want to be in a white neighborhood. Jewish people don't want to live with me. When do we stop it? Cause we listening to what we're even saying. We're citing incidents of people dying, people getting hung, all these things. But we as a people, whether we're liberal or conservative, whether we're left or right, is still wrong. When do we can say we're Christian, but I'm okay with somebody putting their knee on a neck and killing them. I'm okay with that. That's not right.
I'm not okay with it. I just think the media is lying about it.
But we're the media. We're the media too.
Yeah, and that's what I like. There's citizen journalists and reporters coming out, and I like them. I follow them more than I follow the mainstream, the big pharma-funded corporate government-run media. He who controls the narrative controls the people. I don't want to be controlled by them. That's why I tell people to read legislation. You want to know what's going on in your state? Read the bills. Go straight to the bills and then decide whether this is for you or this is for big government, which I don't want. I don't want to live in a communist country. I don't want to live in a tyrannical country. My family fled that. And this same stuff happens in those countries. They pit people against each other and they pull the strings at the top. And we don't need to give them the power.
So my question would be, and I believe, what was your color that you put up just now?
I put, because I don't like the definition of hate speech. They said, I'll tell you, I've been on media real quickly. I disrupted a drag queen story time for children because this is my tax money. Don't go and tell children that they're a mistake. I believe that's evil, okay? You're planting in their head that they are born in the wrong body. How are these kids, they're gonna be dysfunctional.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you.
And so
I'm
they
sorry,
said that what I was spewing out was hate speech in this thing. That's not hateful, that's loving, because I believe they were beautifully and wonderfully made by God.
You're bringing your story, and I realize this is the only perspective you can come from because it's yours.
I've lived it.
So what I was going to ask was, the reason why I asked what color would be, first of all, hate speech is not defined. There are dog whistles that happen that could be construed as hate speech. The reason why I said it should be protected is because we as people will come up with a different word to make something else, and guess what? All we're doing is building an 11-foot ladder for a 10-foot wall. So the protection now, the other part to it is, because it's protected, it does not mean that you cannot somewhere in your life, in your personal life, your friends, whatever, suffer consequences for that action, period. So I believe in the notion of free speech. So my question to you, the reason why I asked that was, in that same rhetoric, what do you feel about what happened with Jimmy Kimmel? Because that is a pure attack. So I would ask, actually, Chelsea, I would ask you, so to see that in a real time unfold, and if you look historically what has happened when there's an autocracy and you don't like, and mind you, there's so many to blame in this too. It's not just the FCC. This is also Disney, saying, guess what? I have a deal that's in place. This is much bigger than this. So my question would be, how would you say that, considering that he has been on the side of criticizing the current administration?
I hate the idea of anyone being canceled. You know, I hate the idea that Trump's, Twitter was banned for so long, right? I think it's almost ironic, though, that everything happened with Jimmy Kimmel, and there's such a rush to defend him, like, oh my God, he was just saying words, he should still have this platform. And yet, the assassination with Kirk, like, he said things and people hated that and he got shot and people did celebrate that. So there just seems to be a double standard where Jimmy Kimmel should still have his show and be able to say whatever he wants. But then with people on the right, it's like so catastrophic if they say anything or if they speak out in their own way. So I just look back and I'm like, there's so much irony here. I don't think people should be killed over things. I don't think they should be canceled over things. I wish that, there was a late night show where we didn't have to talk about politics, where it was really like off the table. Like, I want relief from that. Like, I feel like also like your situation, like you were saying, like people got to spend more time with you and it suddenly shifted from calling you this word to seeing you as a human. I wish.
Keep breaking them down. Eating them up. Anyway, y'all be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Definitely subscribe. Share the video. Let's get back into this piece. Ain't too much talking.
There's more outlets where I could just hear from the humans, and I know that involves politics in a way, but I just feel like I've had the most beautiful, loving experiences with people without ever having to get into politics, and I feel like it gets ruined when that gets put into it. So in a way, it's like, maybe it's bad, I would rather be a little bit naive and not so consumed by it, because it allows me to still have an open heart and not trying to cancel people out and not have them as friends. I've had that toward me. I've always been a very open person. So when people found out that I did vote as a Republican, at first it was funny to them because I never thought Trump would win. But when he did, it's like I became a real problem to people and I lost a lot of people and they loved me before. And that was tough.
Where one of the biggest issues is when it comes to the political structure is this. Voting for self-interest or for what you're considering maybe is your collective set of people. It is difficult, I do believe, for people to first and foremost vote against their own self-interest, despite whatever else might be said. And that person, I remember when Bush was elected the second time, and there was these two cute little old ladies who were in the airport, and they says, okay, so get off the airplane, he wins, and she's like, you know what? I didn't vote for him, but just let him finish the job, And it was, we get to a point sometimes there is complacency amongst us, and whatever the issue is that's present for you is what's going to take over. I don't see how anyone can see past that. So I can understand voting. I voted, Republican. I have never voted straight ticket. I will go and look at an issue and see if that's something. And I always want to caution to lump everyone. And you see this on any of the stations, the African American vote, the anything, and that is completely unfair. That, again, starts to centralize a group that shouldn't be that way anyway, because that means that you have to think this way. But we are such a divide that our listening skills are moot, because the best art, the part of listening, is being able to hear what your person is saying, not already coming with a formulated understanding and being able to understand exactly, because that arrow goes both ways. So any response I'm going to have to anyone will be, okay, I'm understanding what you're saying, and I can agree with points. So what we'll do is conflate, like this one big issue where the left did this. The left is not us. You take the sound bites, because if you say don't take the sound bites, you're taking that. And
no, I'm not. I'm looking at the evidence. I look at
I'm not Antifa though.
I read the transcripts, and it's completely different from what the mainstream media is putting out there.
Do you ever think
Breonna Taylor, let me
do you
finish
ever think
about-
your life would be chiller though if maybe you weren't reading the transcripts and you were just
No, because it's not about that. I care about truth. I care about Jesus,
I'm gonna go home
and
and read my own
Jesus is
story.
about
I don't need to read that.
truth. I care about exposing the truth. Okay, so with Breonna Taylor, I was asked what I thought about her, and I said, Breonna Taylor was a thug, and so was her boyfriend. Let me finish. I know
I'm
that you're
listening.
getting emotional, but let me finish what I have to say. And I said, where the energy goes, the energy flows. And so don't do it. Now, what you heard in the media is completely different from the actual story. There was a knock warrant, not a no-knock warrant. They lied and said no-knock warrant. There was a knock warrant. The cops came in. She had a gun like this, and they shot her because she had a gun pointing at the cops. We never heard any of that. We heard lies because they want to pit us against each other. Again, this is why you gotta look at the transcripts.
Okay, the original prompts also, I mean, oh God, I'm like, my mind is jumbled because, okay, quickly on Breonna Taylor, I don't even know how we got here, but just quickly on that, if someone, I'm not like a gun-toting whatever. I don't want them around. I don't like looking at them. They make me uncomfortable. But if traditionally conservatives are fighting for the right to bear arms and someone is breaking down your door and coming into your apartment and they have a gun to protect themselves because they don't know who's coming in, unidentified, then, I mean, it makes sense. They were not even supposed to be there. That was her fault, 0%.
She had a warrant.
I feel like because hate speech is so subjective, it's just, it's determined by whoever has the most power, and unfortunately who has the most power is whoever has the most money, and right now that's Trump and his little cronies. And so I don't really want anybody to determine what someone can say or can't say, but what you were saying earlier is you still may have to suffer those consequences. Because yeah, like what we're talking about with chemical, with Jimmy Kimmel, I think it's insane that he was taken off the air. But like, I still think that, Fox can stay on and say their stuff, like, I don't agree with a lot of it or whatever, but like, they're allowed to have that platform. I think Kimmel should have his platform. And the government should not be policing that.
Are
I
you
think it's
okay
pretty
with
insane.
them lying and lying and lying and lying and over again? Are you okay with
What are you
the
talking
media
about?
lying to us?
What are you talking about?
Do you know what Operation Mockingbird media is?
No.
Our government is our media.
I know.
It's literally propaganda.
I know.
And they are lying about things. Jimmy
Yes.
Kimmel knew what actually happened, and he blatantly lied to the public.
I'm not going to talk about Jimmy Kimmel because I don't know what happened. But
And I applaud you for saying that. No, I'm dead.
think we
Let me
all
say
need to.
something. I'm going to tell you why. That is so important because if you don't have an opinion about something, if you don't know enough information, why is your voice being prevalent on an issue? How many times have we seen people say, guess what? Well, you know what? I hadn't read that part yet. That is what frustrates me more than anything, and that comes from everyone. We are trying to have a voice when you do not deserve one on a particular platform. If I come up here and you're talking about something, I will sit back because I don't know what it is that you're talking about. And I cannot push forward something I think would be intelligible if I do not have an iota. So I truly applaud you for saying that.
look
So.
at me.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I won't discuss that point, but I can't think, and I don't know if I misinterpreted the prompt. I don't think that hate speech is something that should be protected, as in I don't think it's something that should be enabled at all. I cannot think of a single reason why it would be productive to allow people to commit hate speech. I understand the problem in that it's difficult to define, and like that's a thing, but I don't think that should stop us. The law doesn't exist to allow us to do whatever we want. And we do look at what is productive for society, and I can't conceptualize how allowing people to perpetuate bigotry is productive in any context. And that is how we allow certain narratives to get so far that political violence can happen, that genocides can happen, that violence towards particular groups can happen, is because we don't police. It sounds woke, and it sounds, maybe because I'm Gen Z, maybe because I'm the youngest person here, whatever, that I'm totally fine with saying you can't say that, because that's what my generation does. But it sounds annoying, but no, like we actually do need to nip it in the bud and say, yeah, no, like saying that slur's a problem, don't say that because it leads to that thing. Yeah, no, don't say this negative thing about this group of people, it's a problem because it leads to these things. And like, maybe
That's
it's
what they're
annoying,
doing
maybe
in
it's
Europe, though.
nitpicky.
They're doing that in Europe, and they're arresting people for silently praying at abortion clinics. Do you want to get to that point?
No.
But
That's
that's
scary.
not what I'm
I
arguing.
think one of the issues is who defines what hate speech is, and then who gets to police it. Because I think that really it's the government that has the greatest monopoly on violence. And what you really don't want is the government policing and controlling speech. That's when you really do get totalitarian governments. And I think, I appreciate all you guys that, also believe in free speech. And I think that, free speech is really the way to stop violence, because violence comes when you can't speak and when you can't express yourself.
So free speech is the ability to express oneself in regards to one's beliefs or your organization's beliefs, social issues, things of that nature, right? Hate speech has like 5 main points. I'm going to point out 2 of them, and then we're going to move on. One of the most pressing ones, and I think that we're seeing today, is imminent intent of lawlessness, immense lawlessness. So some people might say, and I'm just using this as an example. I'm not going to debate this with y'all, but some people might say January 6th happened, what they were trying to do, and I'm not even going to say some people. I'm going to give a very realistic example so we can move on. The reason that there was court proceedings about that with Donald Trump and everything is because people were saying, I'm not saying, 'cause I'm not going to get into it, people were saying that he was inciting that to happen. That's what people are saying. So whether you believe it or not, I'm just trying to give that as an example. People have said that on the right as far as things that happened with George Floyd, that, this is inciting this, right? So there's an element of saying I don't like someone, or saying that because someone was murdered you feel a certain way. I don't agree with that. I think it's very, when it comes to vulgarity and celebrating murder, right? But that's different than calling someone to do harm. But then there's to your point, there's the issue because where do you draw the line? The second thing is targeted, I don't know, it sounds like targeted attacks, but it's targeted speech. So that means you're targeting a certain group, if someone says down with the Jews, or this community, or that's targeted. So that's a little bit different. It's very unfortunate to me that us as Americans, that we don't have the human decency to figure that out. But one thing I think we do agree on is that it should not be policed by our government, because that is dangerous.
Yes, I agree.
And the next prompt is, white privilege is a real and present force in America.
Okay, I'm gonna try to be a bridge right now. So this is my thought, and I just want to insert real quick. I don't think Charlie was shot for political violence. I don't put it in that category. I'm a follower of Jesus. I think that he was shot for proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. That is my opinion. So I think we're in a spiritual war. That's my opinion.
So you think it's religious?
Huh?
It was a religious violent act?
I think there are.
How would you
I think we
categorize
can
it?
all contend, be it George Floyd, be it Charlie Kirk, whatever. I think we can all contend that there's evil.
I agree with that. I think there's evil that are greater than anything red or blue, and I think a lot of people aren't ready to have that conversation.
So-
I think foreign affairs have a lot to do with it.
So
I'm not saying anything
Curious
else
as to
about
how
it.
you categorize what's
I don't look at Charlie Kirk's death and go, wow, he was politically assassinated.
That's not your interpretation.
That's
of it.
not my
How do you
interpretation.
interpret it?
I interpret it as that we are told, Christ was killed because of what he was saying. It's the Jews killed Christ. So he was being disruptive, and he was basically a truth teller and was killed for telling the gospel. Because ultimately, I believe my foundation and my fundamental level that I'm going to derive even my beliefs from, even what I want to answer what the question was too. But I just wanted to insert that because I
But do you
didn't
have an
want to say that.
interpretation that's not rooted, people need to be religious in order to understand what you're saying? Do you just have a...
Well, I think we're in a battle between good and evil. That's what I think. I've seen evil at my door. I've got, for sake of time, I have, I'm not going to sit here and tell you my life story. But yeah, but there is a lot of evil, be it George Floyd, be it Charlie's assassination, and I think that there is a unifying factor, that there is good and there's evil. Now, that obviously goes into, okay, well, what do you define as evil and what do you define as good and all the things, right? So my fundamental level of that comes from biblically speaking. That's where I go to find my grounding and what I defined as good and evil. So I'm always going to have, if someone's not biblically living their life, we're not going to agree because we're living by two different moral standards, and that's fine. I'm like, okay, that's great, but don't tell me how to live my life. And I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. So that's kind of my thing. This is what I think about white privilege, is that I do believe because of Black history in America, there is generational stuff that that the Black community has had to overcome that the white community has not. Okay, so I want to start there, and I think and I believe that there are things and roads that they're just harder. They're harder to overcome. If my parents were divorced, I am at a disadvantage now to stay married. And guess what? My parents were divorced. I got divorced. And this is, again, I'm going to go to a spiritual aspect, okay? Is the sense that there's generational stuff that each one of us, like if I sat down and had coffee with each one and everybody, we could probably have a really nice chat about, hey, how did you grow up? Like, where did you grow up? What's your family dynamic like? And, you know, I've worked in recovery groups for a long time and things like that with the crazy spectrum of people from all different backgrounds, okay? But again, I derive my foundation of that. My goal is to make heaven crowded. And I truly believe Jesus is the only way, the truth, and the life. And so I'm always going to come at it from that angle. Now, in saying that, there is a really real overcoming that the Black community had to do. I'm just sorry that is the reality. It's a dark piece of history in America, and from the Jim Crow laws all the way to the Civil War, everything. I mean, Black Code before they came up with Jim Crow laws and all those things. That is a dark part of the Black community that is ingrained in your guys' history generationally. So there's mentalities, there's abuse, there's things that you guys probably were passed down in your guys' line that weren't passed down in my line. And so I can acknowledge that. Now, I would also come from the standpoint of that once we become a Christian and once we meet Jesus, we become new in him. And he can give us newness, and he can break what we have been through and what we've come from. And so my stance will always be to lift people up. Mm-hmm. To a place of equalness. That is my personal way that I operate in my life. I have people all over my life from all spectrums. You know, I just spoke at a gay man's house a couple months ago because I was invited there to, you know, I'm all over the spectrum. So that's why I say, you know, I'm not in a box, I guess, conservatively, because my ex-husband, his parents came illegally to this country. So my kids are half Salvadorian. So I have this I'm a kind of a mutt, like a conservative mutt, where I think a lot of things need reform. I don't like a lot of the stuff in the police department. I am all for, I think that we need to have a strong, police and all those things, but there needs to be reform. There's some really crappy cops out there. And so.
I'd like to say one thing. We are sitting with the understanding that there will ever be equality. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying that just purely from a race perspective. And when we talk about privilege, privilege exists amongst everyone. What tends to be more prevalent is the privilege you see that white Americans would have. If you're looking at, from the lens of someone else. And that's all we can ask, right?
Yeah,
so you look
I guess
through it,
the question was, I think currently, right now, I do not think it is. Currently, in 2025. Now, as I said, where I come from, I can acknowledge that there is a really dark history that the Black culture has had to overcome that I didn't.
I also want to say that everyone has to overcome that, because that is America. Yeah. Right. That's not just because
and that's the Democrat Party. That was the Democrat Party.
No, that's an
KKK,
American
Jim Crow
problem.
law, slavery was all the Democrat Party.
But
Okay, again, the senior citizen from the South. I went to private schools. They had the Black Catholic school and they had the white Catholic school. The one tuition was one price for the Black kids, one tuition was one price for the white kids. And now, 60 years later, what has changed? We still have things. I'm a registered nurse again, but I've had the worst clients with a bachelor's degree in nursing, worse clients with less pay. I had to orient, and they're Christian in me, orient and help white nurses, Hispanic nurses that didn't speak English, Filipino nurses that didn't speak English. I got paid less. So if we talk about money and white privilege, how am I not the supervisor, but I have to train you to be the supervisor?
But also, isn't
White
it judging
privilege.
us by our skin color? If you say white privilege, you're assuming because I have lighter skin that I just had it so easy.
That's actually not what the assumption is. It's not even an assumption. You just haven't had to go through any of these hardships because of your skin color.
How do you know
Not-
that?
not-
I came from Iran. I came from fleeing the
you're white-
country.
you're white passing.
And by the way, my half sister who lives there, she never plays the victim card. Even
That's
though
great.
she's and let me finish. There's women that can't do the things that we do in this country. And the thing to me, I believe it's a psyop. If you're saying someone has white privilege, what are you saying about people that have darker skin, that they're beneath you? That's called,
Well, let's
to me,
figure
that's
out what
called
she's
white
saying and let her
supremacy.
finish.
Now, wait,
That's called white supremacy.
If I can, because like it even goes beyond not being that deep. Like, of course, we all know black men are killed disproportionately than white men by police, and then their murderers.
They do 60%
Please
of the
let me
crime. That's a
speak.
statistic.
Hey, please let me speak.
I know,
You've
but
spoken
I'm just
for like 20 minutes. I've spoken for like 2. There's deep stuff like that. There's real stuff. Communities that are like still trying to get their families out of the trenches because of redlining and, like you said, different tuitions and unequal pay and stuff like that. But then there's even stuff like they just now started making Band-Aids in our skin color. Like it's even as like simple as that. Bandages were made to match your skin tone. For so long, nude was only in your skin tone. Only just now am I wearing a bra underneath this that is closer to my skin tone, but this came out in a lingerie line that came out in the last 10 years.
But that's a
very-
corporation.
No,
That's
no,
not
no,
government.
No, but
That's a corporation.
A person is
yeah,
running
you
that.
should tell the corporation we would love to have it in our skin color.
Reflective of the larger society.
it feels like irrelevant and dumb that I'm like saying this now by itself, but just along with like bandages, but there's also like makeup lines. It was really hard. My mom, when she was learning how to contour her face, we had to use black eyeshadow because there was nothing in her skin tone.
Do you hear this, lady? This is why there's a movement to stop women from being able to vote because of the comments that this lady is making right now. She was much smarter when she was sitting quietly.
At all, like her foundation. And then one time I ordered makeup online in my skin tone and they gave me a sample and it was like the lightest sample they had. It's like they weren't even considering that maybe the person who was ordering this wasn't white. And then if you go on set somewhere, the black hairstylists and black makeup artists are always expected to be able to handle everybody. They do everybody's hair, they do everybody's makeup, but white hairstylists have done some crazy shit to my hair, crazy shit, and said things like, oh, I've never worked with this kind of texture before, even though they're the professional hired to be on set that day. We're expected to do it all.
I will say, I think there's like a privilege, I know that sounds crazy, to being, having to do more than us and having gone through so much. I think that we've heard a lot about spirituality, but I feel like because you guys have gone through so much, there's like an enlightenment to you. I always feel such a draw and just so seen in a way that I don't feel as much with white people, I would say. So, I mean, I will just say that I feel like you guys are magnets and I hope that your voice gets heard more because I think that there has been a lot of trauma of just invisibility and your way of rising through it and still being survivors and stuff. I don't know, I've always felt like it's been super special and I'm so thankful for the relationships that I've had.
Shit, not the bridge being built. Not the bridge!
I will never forget, let me just say, when I was younger, I will never forget looking over as a young kid and seeing a black man get out of a Mercedes.
Okay, look, you see how happy they got? It's like they just want to be worshipped. Who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck if they like us? If they care about you? As long as they're not impeding on your path, they don't have to like you.
And something, I was like, that's success. And there's just always that vision. And I know it doesn't have to be like a superficial symbol, but there was just something implanted in me as a young kid. And I had a buzzed head when I was young, and I felt like I think I've allowed myself to see that, like, having shorter hair as a female, like, I haven't seen myself a lot on, you know, in the media. And I've heard that be a complaint of a lot of other people of not feeling that represented. So I think kind of feeling othered a lot in my own world in just a small way had made me feel like a kinship. And so I think that while there's privilege to being white, I feel like there's another privilege that doesn't get spoken about of actually having to suffer, because those are the people that really know how to, like, have resilience and rise up and actually listen and just thrive. So.
I know that we were just celebrating the bridge you made, and I don't want to tear it down, but I think I had a different response, seemingly, than the rest of the room to that. I know that you mean well by that, and I can see that you're very genuine. I have a really hard time sitting with the idea that the significant trauma that the Black community has experienced in this country has made us enlightened, and that there's like this beautiful spiritual quality that it's given us, because I think it feels, and maybe I'm just speaking to the way that's landed for myself, like a huge bypassing of how genuinely traumatic that is, to be like, well, look at you, like you're radiant now.
No, I'm not saying that.
I'm
like, saying that, like,
the way that
you've been through something, whereas, like, we're over here and we can, who knows how much we've even been through.
Yeah, and like I'm not.
But you've
disagreeing
also
with
rolled
that.
your eyes at so many people that have been speaking. So I don't know if that's your.
I mean, a lot of really insane things have been said.
I don't know if that's your immediate response is just to roll your eyes. Might not have the best, like, language with it, but I know that, like, on a soul level, like, I feel I have a lot of awe and respect.
And I appreciate that a lot.
Take it where you can get it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. All I'm saying is this idea that somehow having endured what the Black community has endured in this country and coming out the other end, barely surviving, there are people right now who are not surviving, that's somehow a privilege is ludicrous. And like, maybe what you said completely landed wrong with me, but that's how I took all of that, and that's all that's
There
wrong.
is no historical educational context to this conversation, although I appreciate everything every single person has attributed. I genuinely do here about the topic. This is systematic, which means you as individual people may totally not be doing anything at all to perpetuate this. It just is. I have certain privileges. Everybody here has certain privileges. This is systematic. Black women are 4 times more likely to die with anything related to do with maternity. You know what I mean? Like, this is systemic.
Explain that.
And then
explain
also
that.
too, which I really appreciate you bringing up, and I'm going to connect it, which I really appreciate you bringing up.
Which part?
About, I'm going to tell you
Yeah, I'm
earlier when you
curious.
said the
I've
stuff
never heard
about
that.
like Reconstruction and Black codes and Jim Crow, right? Like, you were saying all those things. A lot of that stuff, my sister is also a nurse. So like, let's say medical documentation for an example. Like, this is a little bit of an example, right? It'll say like, for white patients, sometimes more often than not by studies in the field, it'll say, this patient, expressed that they had, pain, and they were very agitated because they were in so much pain. For a Black patient, it'll say more often than not, this person was aggressive or like med seeking. We need to, you know what I mean? It's like there's always a suspicion because that comes from another lineage. So just as there was so much trauma passed on with us, which thank you for acknowledging, it's true, there was a lot of other stuff passed on to a lot of other people, and that's why we have people marching in the streets chanting that same rhetoric in 2025. And so I think there's this misconception that, like, if we acknowledge white privilege exists, I I went viral for saying that when I was on another platform and they asked me 5 years ago, do white people experience racism? And I said no, because in context, which we don't know and we're not taught, so I'm not mad at anybody here, because as a teacher, I realize the fundamental thing is that we don't know our own history as Americans, race aside. And maybe if we did, we could actually get past race and deal with the issues that are affecting all of us, like classism and foreign entities. And to your point, people at the top controlling these narratives and all this other stuff. But I'm gonna stop, because I could go on forever. But as a teacher and just as a human being, the fact that there's no systemic fundamental basis to anything that we're saying when we talk about the nuance of white privilege, because it was built into systems. The whole idea of race was a construct. There's only one race, that's the human race. There are
Correct.
black people that will
I
hear that and
agree.
get so pissed off at me for saying that.
But I
But
love
that is
it.
the truth.
That's what we got to get back to.
Racism is not about blackness. Racism is about whiteness. Because when slavery happened, there were Native Indians, there were poor whites, and there were slaves. And they were all not too far from the same hardships. So people that were wealthy, just like now, were like, we got to find a way to separate these people. So they told poor white people, well, you know what, you might be poor, but at least you're not black. You know, and I'm using that language intentionally. So all of that was put into policies to make to what we see today. So it's just, you know, I understand what you're saying about the Band-Aids in the hair, and it's real. Shout out to Fenty. But
It's a Fenty bra.
I love it. I love it.
But couldn't that be also because of the population rather than the color of your skin? Could it be like, oh, we're learning how to do hair?
Yeah, but she's sharing
let me
her
finish.
experience.
Let me finish what
I'm sharing
let me finish
American
what I'm
history.
saying. Can I finish my thought, please? So we're looking at the population, the black community is 13%. So when people are learning to do hair, maybe it has nothing to do with just because you're black. It has to do with people are learning how to do the majority of the population's
That's always
hair.
been the excuse.
That's true, but
I'm just saying
that's
that
why I
it could
brought
be,
in real
this is what I'm
historical,
saying, but we
systemic, and
see
systematic
everything
examples.
in color. And when I've gone to board meetings, this is what bothers me. I go to a school board meeting and they talk about white privilege and this. So you're telling my child who's never been a part of, Jim Crow law, racism, any of this, that she's an oppressor and that black kids are oppressed. I believe both of them are evil, and I'll tell you why. Number one, how do you keep a person down? You tell them they're a victim, and there's no way of rising up.
I do agree with that.
And I think that's a psyop. I think that's
white privilege will
psychological
never
warfare.
stop my black excellence.
Yeah, let me finish.
So we
I think
agree.
that's a psychological warfare against the black kids, and I think it's also a psychological warfare against white kids, because they have to feel shame and guilt of something that they've never been a part of, and it's a divide. Now, they're pitting white kids against black kids. That's wrong, because again, as a Christian, we believe there is no such thing as race. We believe we are all in the image of God. That's why it upsets me, because it is divisive.
But you see how I'm the one that injected that? So I believe that as history, because historically that's what happened. But to say racism was not a construct that came and was implemented and imposed to validate segregation, Jim Crow.
Oh, I think it's awful.
The Reconstruction,
And,
all that.
I'm totally against
it would be a
the
miss.
the
Can I-
racist
I do wanna hear from
I'd
you.
like
Democrats.
to jump into
I would love to hear from you.
Okay, so first of all, this was a tough question for me to answer. I ended up answering no, white privilege is not an issue right now, but that was hard because certainly through the vast majority of American history, white privilege has definitely been an issue, and worse than white privilege. You know, slavery and Jim Crow was, I think, and what happened to the Cherokees and Native Americans was the darkest chapter of our country's history. And my grandparents are from Arkansas, and my grandma participated in a civil rights movement, and I 100% know that that happened. And I'm so sorry that that's still happening to you. That's so completely wrong. One of the things I just wanted to bring up is because my dad's an immigrant. So my dad is Greek from Istanbul, Turkey. So he went through the same thing where both sides of his family had their property taken away by the Turks. They were beaten up on the way to school. They did have a Greek school, but it was controlled by the Turkish military, and they were forcibly drafted. My brother-in-law is Greek from Cyprus. So his mother the Turks came in during that war and they were on vacation in Athens. They took their house. They put her father in prison because he was the mayor. They were not even allowed to go back and get their property. They had to flee to America. And I live in Glendale, which is a large contingent of Armenians who lived through the Armenian genocide. So their grandparents just were massacred. It was even worse than what the Greeks went through. Our neighbors had to flee with nothing from the Yugoslavian Civil War. So I think where I'm going with that is that there's 100% no denying the incredible hardships that the Black community has overcome, and I agree with where you're coming from that we shouldn't pretty that up. I want to make a point that I was raised really colorblind, and actually the George Floyd thing was helpful for me because I did start to hear more about what the Black community was going through and feeling, and I really appreciated that. And sometimes it was hard to hear, but it was good for me to hear. But I also know that there are other groups that have gone through really horrible things and have come right out of it. My husband's boss, his mother, both of her parents died in the concentration camps, and she was just saved as a child and brought in. It was completely messed up, and he had a really difficult childhood because of it. So I think that I would say the reason I went with no, and like I said, that was a tough choice for me, but in 2025, I feel that we're a country where there's many groups that have had a tough history, and that at this point in time, there is overall equal opportunities. It's always difficult to be in the minority, but I don't know how much things can be distinguished between the difficulty of being in the minority and then overt racism. And I don't feel at this point that there's anything I could do that you guys couldn't do. And that's ultimately why I made that choice.
Yeah, I mean, with what you were ending with, that we're capable of doing the same things you're capable of doing, I do think that's true. But being in a position where I can even think to reflect on what other people are doing and know that I have that access to it is within itself a privilege. I grew up, I went to one of the best school districts in California. I took college readiness courses, like very young. I was very much prepped for this life where I knew I was gonna be able to go to a university. I knew I was gonna be able to get a good job. I knew I was gonna have all of these life prospects that a lot of people that are in predominantly Black areas where they don't have access to those things, where the schools are not being funded well, don't have those opportunities. And so much of that was because I had immense proximity to white people. I only knew white people for the vast majority of my life because those are the communities that I was in, and that's what we give to white people. So I can even only think that I can do the things that you can do, like go to college, like buy a house, like do all these things because of a proximity to whiteness that I had that a lot of Black people obviously don't have, and that shouldn't need to be the case in order for us to have those privileges.
And the next prompt is, I do not trust law enforcement to treat all people fairly.
Well, I was arrested. I went to a parents' rights rally and I put no, and I was arrested for exercising my First Amendment rights. But I feel like it's a form of bigotry to say that all cops are bad, because there are a lot of good cops. I live in the city of Beverly Hills, and they've kept us protected from the far radical left that are violent. But when I was downtown LA fighting for my right as a parent, I was, really illegally apprehended and taken to the Metropolitan Detention Center. So there are bad cops, or they're doing what they are told to do by the ex-communist mayor, Constantine Anthony. And I said, why am I being arrested? He said, failure to disperse. So here's another example where it could be weaponized too. But I'm still not gonna put a brushstroke over all cops. There's a lot of amazing people in law enforcement, and if we do a brushstroke over all of them, that is a form of bigotry, and that is wrong.
Your feeling about something is your feeling. First, I want you to walk in paint yourself black and nap your hair up for a day and do an experiment. I was going to my own apartment where I live and pay rent. I pulled into my stall. A policeman behind me said I looked like a man with these. Looked like a man that they were looking for in the same type of car that I was driving. He put his hand on his gun. I said, I live here. I'm getting my key out. What did I do? Don't ask me what you did. No, I cannot trust a policeman to do the right thing.
And you felt like that was racially motivated? I'm asking. I'm
Racial,
genuinely asking.
yes, racially and sexually. These boobs don't look like anybody's man.
I just
Not
for
at all.
context, a lot of the
No.
I'm just curious on the black side. How have you raised your hand if you've ever had a situation like with the police where like that, like you had to prove why you were somewhere, or they just thought that you were doing something nefarious, or it's just something unwarranted? Have you guys had that happen? So the thing is like, I'm just sharing this bridge with you for context, right? Unfortunately, more often than not in the black community, right? People look at me, they think I have a lot of privilege or whatever. And I do have a lot of privileges, but like no matter what part of the diaspora you are in the black community in this country, more often than not, you have been wrongfully policed, interrogated, or accused, you know? And I saw my mother go through that as a single mom with 2 kids who was just working, minding her business. You know, it's a lot of what we see now with different communities, with other things that are going on. So that's a lot of where we have this context. But I also will say a lot of it, again, has to go back with history and the way they're taught. And of course, all police officers are not bad. How do I know this? Because the LAPD hired me to train their cadets about this issue because they realize everyone is not treated fairly.
What I was trying to say is, this is not a position where you do not bring in your own bias, period. So I do not believe all police are bad, not even remotely.
Nor do I.
Actually, this is the perfect time we decide not to bring your bias in when we're talking about a particular group of people, the police, and whether or not you feel that they're treating people right. Are they racist or whatever? Are they good cops? And if you use all your negative situations because you speed all the time and get tickets, then that's on you, buddy. You gotta be objective. Stupid.
We also have to understand how policing was formed. If you have unconscious biases that you don't even realize you have. There's this funny skit that I saw on a social media platform as to, you know, like when a woman gets into an elevator and then a black guy gets in. And what happened to me, and this
I've
is
seen it.
funny. Yeah, I said, I've never had an encounter with police that I didn't think, I rarely had encounters with the police, but that I didn't think was positive. I don't think that has anything to do with my race. I think it has to do with me. I do honestly believe, because I've been told this, if there's someone who probably could transcend race where it's not necessarily that prevalent despite skin tone and everything, it's probably me. So with that, my experiences have been very, very different. I grew up in LA, I've lived in Houston, New York, I've lived in Miami, I've lived in Las Vegas. But that's just, I attribute that to me as a person. But it is difficult for people to not bring in biases regardless. This woman tells me, and I'm bald, so from afar, I guess I have an androgynous look, but she hits the elevator, she's getting in, and she looks back and she looks at me again, and then I can tell that she relaxes. And she tells me in the elevator.
Like she thought you were a man?
Right.
Okay.
But what she said was that I've been, and I think she just wanted to give me an explanation, which is why she was, and she says, because I personally don't get on an elevator with a man alone. And my finding was that I'm totally not a man. Like I said, but the ball thing throws people off. But, and I understood that. Someone else could have taken that in a way that could have very well been very different. But we all have these biases, and we cannot expect for a police officer to shed anything that any experience he brings to that job, shed that, then put this policing uniform on and do that where everybody looks the same. Outside of some goggles that just makes people look like people, There's no way for, and that
That would be
goes
cool.
both ways. Exactly, that would actually be kind of cool. But we have to realize that. So there are people who get into policing probably for the ability to be able to exert control over the others.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
So policing itself is the issue, but we have to realize that that does not turn off the human part of people, and they will bring in what they bring in, their understanding of what they did yesterday or who they saw yesterday. And we can't really, because if I was in that same position, I might do the same thing. Who knows? But we have to understand that that is just, that is the kind of the floor plan, the floor print for policing. You do bring this in. You do look at something with a suspicious eye and everything that you've gone through. And if we don't understand what we've gone through, then this will be a continuation of that.
So I have, in regard to policing, like I feel like I have experienced both very dramatic ends of the pendulum. I had a really traumatic situation when I was young in 8th grade. We had someone break into our home, raped my mom, tried to kill her and my little brother. Like, I say it nonchalantly, but it was absolutely terrible. Police are the ones who came in and saved my mother's life. And so I have, and I tell it to the sense that that's really dramatic. Like, that's not everyone's experience, right? But my mom's alive. My little brother is alive because police came in, they found the man, he was tried, like the whole thing. Like, that was a good example of law enforcement doing their job, acting appropriately. My taxpayers went to save paying dollars went to save my mother's life, kind of a thing, right? Then I really had a really big problem with the police during COVID. I feel like we were living in a police state during COVID. And I'm like, I really don't like this because, like, again, there was a complete break from the Constitution with police during COVID. And I thought that was really scary. And so I say that, and that's why I did green, because I do not think that there can be this broad stroke, because people do. Now, I have a police family. I have a brother-in-law who is a police officer in LA. And so I know that there is good policemen out there. He's Asian, but I don't know why. I feel like I need to say that.
That's the only cop I know, too. Maybe it's a thing.
But I know there's good cops out there. My brother-in-law is a good guy, and I know he's fair and he's just. But there's so that's why I had to go green, because I'm like, yeah, that's just stupid. There's good doctors, there's bad doctors, there's good police, there's bad police. So I'm like, I'm like the kind of person who's like, I would like to sit with you. Let's have a cup of coffee and let's talk, let's bridge, right? And so, anyway, so that's my take on the police thing. Is that I do think that there is some areas that need some massive reform. That's my opinion. I think there's a lot of training issues. Cool that you got brought on and got to do some training. But I also do not think that cops are inherently bad either.
And the last prompt is, Christian values should guide America's laws.
I appreciate everyone. If you're still here rocking with me, we're on the last prompt. Before you get up out of here, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. You know me, I'm gonna let the video ride. Alright.
This is a halfway.
Rhonda and I agree.
I don't know. I mean, I just don't think that everyone seems to be able to relate to Christianity. So it's hard to assume that the population would be able to live under that direction. I don't consider myself Christian. It's not why I'm conservative. But I do like feeling connected to a higher power. I like to feel like, the Truman Show changed my life. When I was 9, I always felt like someone could be watching, so I better live with integrity. The stories in the Bible are stories. I can't recite any of them to you. So I don't know, it just doesn't, I can't. It sounds nice that we live by values. I think that rules, even though I don't always love following rules, I do think it's nice to have a society with rules and to have some order, and that we all have principle in our life. But I can't imagine if so many people are getting away from religion that enforcing people to live like that would be good either. So.
I grew up, I agree with you. I grew up Christian and then left the church when I was 21, 22, so about 7 or 8 years ago. And my experience being Christian versus after is like night and day. I didn't realize how trapped I felt. And I had so much shame in my body and fear. I was just so taken out of the moment. And I mean, it could be, the church I went to, that's what my mom says. She's like, like find a different church. But I think at the core, like if you boil it all down, what's left is, treat people with love. And, thou shalt not kill, lie, steal, all of that, like, obviously I agree with, like 100%. But I think it's when people distort it and then try to control other people's bodies or like telling you that, only this is the only type of love that should exist. This is who you should marry. Should. So
You should not steal. That's controlling people's body.
deal with my own shoulds, I deal with my parents' shoulds, and then religions, and then teachers when you're growing up. There's just always like you should be this way, should be that way. But I just want to live authentically myself without harming anybody, whatever feels good. And if it means dressing up in drag and it's not harming anybody, and that's what makes you feel free and hot and sexy, who cares? And tell me where in the Bible that you can't dress up in drag. But like that don't hurt anybody, don't harm anybody, let people live their truth.
There's a difference between you doing you and then forcing us to call you by something we know you're not. So that's, I have no problem with an adult dressing the way they want to dress. What I have a problem is when you force me to use a pronoun which is not, goes by my religion.
But didn't you stop
so
the story
because now
time?
you're forcing someone, they're saying that we're being, homophobic or whatever, because I don't want to call you a he if you're a she, because I'm told not to lie. So it is a lie to me. And so that's where I have the problem, is when you're forcing your ideology and getting mad because I won't call you, something that I know that you're not. That's where I want to draw the line.
Did you not stop the story time? It seems like you do
because it's my tax for children, because it's my tax money, and I have a right to say where I want my tax money to go. And to me, I think it's very evil to put this in children's heads that they're a mistake.
But that's not telling anybody there's a mistake. What is evil about that? You don't have to go to the story time.
Honey, I had Chloe
Don't call
Cole.
me that's crazy.
What? That's an
Sorry, that
endearment.
just feels-
See, that's
it
another
felt-
thing.
Say
You're
it
trying to
again.
control my
Hold on,
speech.
I
Let me
just-
finish.
no,
No,
I
let
wanna
me
hear-
finish.
What did she say? I didn't hear
I
what
said
you said.
honey.
I just said,
and she
please
said,
don't
don't
call
call
me
me
honey.
honey.
Yeah, it just
So
feels
again,
patronizing.
you're controlling me. This is another control thing. I'm not controlling the way you, exercise your freedom of speech. I don't want to be controlled by the left. I get to speak the way. Honey is an endearment. It's something I call my daughter. So you should take that as a compliment rather than
Should. I don't want your shoulds.
Okay,
I don't have
because
to take it
again,
any way.
because you've been taught that way. So this is brainwashing. The 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, 54 were Christians. This is why we have the longest standing constitution, because the foundation is Judeo-Christian values. We need to know what works and doesn't work. This works, but we have to go by it. That's why slavery was wrong, because it's not loving thy neighbor as thyself. Murder is wrong. And all of these fundamental morals is because it actually protects us all. And God does give us a choice. We're not supposed to be, one religion country. That's what happened in other countries with Catholicism. We get to choose, and God gives that ability for us to choose. That's why he allowed Cain to live, because you can choose evil too. He's allowing it.
So our basis should be spirituality and not religion, because when you say Christian, views, what that is implying to me is
I'm so sick of this. I had to pause it. Look, let me get this little rant off, and I promise I'll let the rest of the video rock. Look. I'm so tired of these people trying their best to get away from Christianity. Look, You get your morality from Christianity. I know that's hard to believe, but that's where it comes from. Alright? Now, the only reason they want to get away from the Bible is because they want to continue to be heathens.
Is some indoctrination as to the religion you should have. The thing is, what religion
history.
what religion is a second set of rules. So if you're just out here walling out and you don't want to, at least you believe that you have some moral connection, right? Because that's what it is. Humanity is about us connecting with each other. It doesn't matter how you praise whoever, brought you here. It becomes these core tenets of who we should be. So I know the heart of me is not wanting to harm someone else. There is, even in any Bible or anything that tells me that killing would be okay, I would know morally that that would be wrong. So it is just another set of tenets outside of the rules that we have that are established for this land in order for us to live by, or at least to allow our moral code to be there. So that's what we should be listening to, rather than saying, so it's not just Christians who are.
Yeah, but all your morals that you just said are in the Bible.
But it's not just in the Bible, is what I'm saying. So if you're just saying you're only taking it from this one space, therein lies the problem. But if we're saying that our morality is letting us, be our guide, in addition to these rules, these subsets that we have, that's the important part. It doesn't have to be Christian. There's not spiritual books around here all teaching hate outside of Christianity.
Yeah,
well,
but a lot of people fall
I
for
think
them.
to go back to the question, so the Constitution, we're a constitutional republic. We have democratic processes, but we are a constitutional republic. The Constitution was made, in essence, for a Christian people. That is why we're having such a divide right now, because not everybody's Christian. Right? So you have people, so the Constitution, it says you can keep your republic as long as you have a moral people. So, and where did we derive the morality from? It's from Scripture. So the whole Constitution is derived. So if you go through Exodus, that's where we get the executive branch, the legislative branch. All of the way that our government is constructed comes from Exodus. It comes from when Moses went up on the mountain, came down, and they basically got these constraints from the Lord. That is what the United States Constitution is based off of. So to stay in concise with the question, yes, like if we want to keep a constitutional republic, it is designed for a Christian and a biblical-based people. Now, when we pull away from Christianity, there's going to be a contention there. Why? Because you're trying to, it's a constitution, and we have the longest constitution in the entire world.
Can we just agree, though, and get rid of all these, boxes? Because I'm a believer, right? I'm a follower. I grew up Christian. You could say I'm non-denominational.
What's the box that you're wanting to get rid of?
I'm going to tell you, the box is that, even as a believer, would I love for everybody to follow Jesus? Yes, absolutely. You're supposed to make disciples out of people. But that's their choice, right? God gives us free will. He wakes me up every day with his grace and glory and gives me free will. What do I look like as a human, not extending that to someone else? But you know what I should be extending? Human decency. American values, to your point that you just summed up, already reflect Christian values. And the thing is, if you don't like the term Christian values, yes, the government should not be imposing that on anybody. That's my opinion. Period. No matter who's in office. Period. If that was done democratically, that's wrong. If that was done on the conservative side, that's wrong. Our American values, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, treat people equally, all of these things. Yeah. We don't need to quantify being civilized. Don't murder people that don't agree with you. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying, let me put that disclaimer out there because I know that'll be a soundbite. I'm not saying that anybody on the left or anybody did that. I'm just saying common sense. Don't, love thy neighbor. You know what I'm saying? These are things
we're just
that,
to answer the question though.
I know, but I just feel like the question in itself, which I understand, we get it, is innately divisive because the reality is we're all arguing the same points. Does anybody here want people to be murdered in America? No. Does anybody want to get stole from? No. Anybody about to leave here and go steal? No. So we just need to get back to human decency. The boxes is everything that separates us from what we actually do agree on. So I don't remember even how it was preferenced. American laws or liberties or what was it?
Christian
values,
yes.
right?
Christian values.
The thing is that take the Christian label off. I'm saying this as a Christian because at the end of the day, if we want to keep it so 100, Christianity was created after Jesus. You see what I'm saying? So take that off of it, and what Jesus wants us to do is to treat each other as brother and sister. So all of these boxes, Democrat, Republican, all of that, even the race thing, like I'm so big on it, and I have spoke relentlessly every time I felt like something was being misrepresented racially. However, even with that, our biggest thing is a class thing that is making everybody struggle and it's so divisive. And there's a very few people that are benefiting from it. And if we cannot get past that, there is no America. We need to treat each other with human decency. If I see somebody murdered, I'm going to be bothered. I don't care what their politics are because they're a human, they're God's child, and they're American.
I learned that I am capable of having a conversation with people I disagree with. I mean, even here, you know, our stances are different, and that's something I've really been working on. And it's really hard for me to not like get mad and like hate the person for disagreeing, even if they don't like the same restaurant as me. I'm like, idiot, you know, like why wouldn't you like that? Olive Garden slaps or something. But yeah, I'm capable and I'm proud of myself, and I appreciate you guys participating in this
Wonderful,
dialogue.
wonderful.
I totally had an amazing time. I wish we could all go out and sit and eat together. And we've learned so much of just differences of each other. And like you said, it's okay to be different. It's okay to disagree. And we don't have to be mad at each other. But I love these shoes.
I love
and
your
if
voice.
if nobody
voice is so
else
soothing.
does-
It's like I want to go to bed to that, you know?
if
Like,
nobody else does, if we take away all the good things that we've learned from this.
That's true.
And take it to other people.
Absolutely.
It's okay to be different.
I mentioned this earlier. There was a gentleman, I travel a lot for work, and he said, you know, how many lives do you think you've improved today? And, you know, I was being very just, you know, generous with myself. I'm like, you know, maybe a few. And he's like, listen, once you're putting good energy into the world, imagine you saying that to someone else taking that energy and pushing it out. So I think when we continue to do that, we are affecting billions of lives just by virtue of pushing something good forward. Rather than rehearsing it, we release it, and then we say, what's next? And that is just the art of conversation. That's the art of moving things forward. We can stir about shit that has happened. What is it gonna do for us? Nothing, because you know what? There's going to be bridges that will never be met, you know? However, the bridge forward should be, what is my responsibility as a person in this ecosystem? What is my responsibility to you? And I believe mine is to just put good energy out there.
Yes, I think, so I work in politics, and I really enjoyed this and love this because I think what it showed me is that maybe there are political issues that we're never going to agree on, but relationally and as people, we can really connect and you know, agree to disagree. And I love that, and I feel like I'm going to take that back into my work, and I really appreciate everybody's opinions. Thank you so much.
Alright, let's clap it up for them. Woof. That was a long one. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to like, share, subscribe. Silver Stranger 01. Peace.